you?
Fadzai.
A doppelganger. A witch.
A hybrid.
A werewolf.
I'm a vampire.
Welcome to the Gilbert Journals, where we discuss the supernatural lore of the Vampire Diaries universe. I'm Sandile.
And I'm Fadzai.
And today we're here with a little bit of a grab bag episode. We've talked about vampires, we've talked about witches, and we've talked about werewolves, which are inarguably the most important supernatural archetypes in this world. But there are a couple of stragglers that we're going to be talking about today. And I think most interestingly, these are the ones that are most mortal of the supernatural beings. It'll make sense once I list them. But today we're talking about supernatural hunters, doppelgangers, ghosts, and mediums. Not a lot to say about each of these as compared to the ones we've done so far, so we thought we'll just put them all into one little package. But yeah, without further ado, I guess let's start with supernatural hunters. Which, I mean, in the name, of course, in this world of vampires, there are vampire hunters. And of course, there are hunters who were chosen, you could argue, or just happened to be the most prominent at the time, were selected by a witch or a magical being to imbue them with supernatural ability in order to improve their capability to fight vampires. The first type of the only two types that we know supernatural hunters in this world is the Brotherhood of the Five, which we of course find out about in the 4th season of the show, a witch never named, just the Witch of the Five, part of the Bennett bloodline.
Aren't they all?
Aren't they all? Aren't they all? Takes a group of these 5 European 10th century vampire hunters. 10th, 11th? Is this
11th,
post?
I think. It's 11th because we know that Finn is daggered for 900 years.
So, 11th century vampire hunters, unbeknownst to the Michelsons who interact with them at this point. And this witch carves the special symbol and does a ritual, in the middle of this dark forest and imbues them with power. And she creates this Brotherhood of the Five. We learn this in a flashback after meeting Connor Jordan, who is the first supernatural hunter we meet in the show. From the moment he shows up, he's considerably stronger, considerably more agile, better in all respects of physicality than your average hunter, let alone your average person. And he poses a huge threat. And then Klaus, of course, who is this long-lived vampire of the Michelson family who met the first Brotherhood of the Five, invited them into their home. He tells them about how they were created and about their mission to either destroy vampirism in its entirety or kill Silas the First Immortal, or both. That was their mission. But yeah, interestingly, the physicality of hunters is like most physical strength, it kind of varies how much better they are compared to other strong characters in this world, because it's implied that they are either on par with or at least able to overpower relatively young vampires, right?
Yeah.
He gives Tyler a run for his money too as a young hybrid. And the way Klaus talks about them suggests that they are a threat. Klaus himself did manage to kill the entire Brotherhood of the Five, though, by himself. He is, of course, the original hybrid, so that's not the best measure of where their strength sits in between. I guess you could call them like, you know how in comics when they talk about
Peak human blah blah blah.
Yes.
Captain America.
Yes,
Yeah.
like Captain America of the comics, not Captain America of the MCU.
Who famously holds a helicopter from
Who stands on the edge of the building, muscles flexing, shirt stretching as he holds a helicopter down. Captain America of the comics is described as peak human strength, which I guess the implication is if you could use, it's like the thing we always talk about, if you could use 100% of your brain, even though that's been debunked, if you could stretch your body to its absolute natural limit, if you were as strong as a human could be, or as agile as a human could be, that's what these characters are, rather than
Yeah.
they are dialed up to some unreasonable level.
Which I think I've said this to you before outside the podcast. Like, biologically speaking, the ability to be as strong as a human can be and simultaneously be as fast and as agile and all that, that is superhuman in and of itself, because it's like it's like D&D. Like, you have to take away from one aspect to build up the other aspect. Like, the strongest human being in the world is not capable of being the fastest human being in the world because they'd be too heavy or whatever.
Right. Certainly not. In fact, I did see, it was a TikTok, so let me not claim any sort of academic certainty on the matter, but it was the person themselves who had a condition. I forget what compound it is that the body produces that determines how much musculature your frame can hold. But this person had a condition that produces less of that compound, so his body is able to put on more muscle than the average person can. And he was this huge, like, strongman type. But like you say, he was really strong, not particularly agile, right? Because it is a trade-off. So yeah. Outside of their physicality, which of course helps them better hunt vampires, they have, I guess, psychic defenses against vampires being able to compel you or mentally manipulate you. The Brotherhood of the Five, the Hunters of the Five, are immune to that. It seems they developed that over time, because for Jeremy, there's a specific point. It's not long after he becomes a Hunter of the Five. Jeremy becomes a potential of the Five through Connor, essentially someone who could take over and join the Brotherhood when one of the Brotherhood dies, because there must be five at all times. That's how the magic works.
Yeah, I think after he's been awoken as a hunter, Stefan tries to compel him at one point because he's sort of going against the plan, and then he stakes Stefan in the stomach and is like, I guess I can't be compelled.
Yeah. Notably, when he's still a potential, he can be compelled because Klaus compels him to come draw out the Hunter's Mark when he has Connor Jordan in captivity. Which leads me to my next point. The Brotherhood of the Five all have this tattoo on their arm. It seems like it grows from the arm to the chest and then down to the other arm. With every vampire that they kill, this tattoo grows longer and larger and spreads out, and it has these cool designs, but also text and images into it that tell a story when interpreted. Klaus, I believe, knows some of the story, and then Bonnie, when Jeremy is awakened as a hunter and begins to grow the mark, is interpreting it for him when they're taking pictures of it, when they're trying to find the cure and the grave of Silas. That mark was put on them supernaturally, and also a sword that the main Hunter of the Five back in 11th century AD was engraved with the codex to interpret that map. It's not necessarily endemic to the hunters themselves, but that was the thing that would be used to decode the map.
Was it only Alexander who had the sword?
I don't know for certain. I know that it's the one sword that they have, right?
Yeah.
If they all had swords, then Klaus would have all of them, because he killed all the Hunters of the Five in his home.
I guess. Well, the thing is, Rebecca is the one who buried Alexander in the place where they had planned to marry, and she buried him with his sword, which Klaus didn't know. So I don't know what he did with their corpses when he was done, but Rebecca took it upon herself to bury him, and that's the information Klaus gets out of her 100 years later, when he's like, he needed to know where the sword was, so he tricks her into revealing it to Stefan while they're having a heart-to-heart. If there were other swords, it's not super relevant, but we don't know where they'd be.
It can't have been that there were others, because I can't imagine they would have gone anywhere without them, right? In a way, those were their weapons as Hunters of the Five, even though there wasn't any particular magical component to them. So I have to assume Alexander's the only one who had it, as the leader of the group. Certainly the only one who gets a name. So that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Fair enough. I guess if there had been other swords, they would have just been disposed of when Klaus got rid of the bodies, or they would have been left wherever they had been left, and then, like, I don't know, pawned off, melted down, whatever people do with swords that have no owners over 1,000 years.
But it's like, if he knew Alexander's sword was important, is this something he realized later in the game, and that's why he needed to come back to Rebecca? Because I guess if he knew at the time, he wouldn't have just, like, allowed Rebecca to take the sword and bury him with it.
I think he knew at the time, because I guess once he undaggers Rebecca, she tells him what Alex had told her. So he knew that there was a cure for vampirism, supposedly, that these hunters were after. But Klaus would have had no interest in this cure because, like, at most, maybe he would have wanted to use it on Michael, but for some reason that didn't seem to occur to him then. He only wanted the cure once we were in the era of, I need to make hybrids and Elena is no longer a living doppelganger. A cure would be useful. Wild that he didn't go after it while he was chasing Catherine and thinking that the Petrova line had ended with her.
to undo, because his little doppelganger had eluded him. God, again, like retroactively.
Yeah.
Retcons, man, what are you gonna do? Regardless, also amongst their paraphernalia, we see some of the, or at least one of the hunters of the five, using weaponry or bullets that are etched with this symbol of the five, the symbol that the witch used when she was creating them. We discussed this briefly in the Reyna episode, and you'd mentioned that it seemed to have some sort of effect when he shot Tyler with them. I don't think they definitively determined that it was magical in nature. Because Stefan, like you said, Stefan goes back to Barney to go be like, hey, we've got this new hunter in town and he's using these bullets with the strange mark. Barney tells him that the symbol isn't magical in nature, at least as is etched into that bullet. So I think it was that the bullets were soaked in vervain, which is what injured Tyler, but the symbol itself was indicative of something arcane that wasn't magic itself, and so it was a lead to investigate this new character. So unfortunately, I'm sad to learn that that symbol didn't do anything for his equipment. He didn't make it, like, it didn't help him on his vampire hunting quest.
It was a scene that I was just unclear of because Stefan, I think, like, manually pulls the bullets out of Tyler's abdomen with his fingers. But then later on, when he's examining the bullet and he touches it, suddenly it burns him. And I'm like, why was the vervain not burning you when it was in Tyler? Is Tyler's blood the cure for vervain?
That's fair. Yeah, that's true. I guess maybe just like, maybe that was a direction they wanted to go in and then they kind of dropped it in the middle. I don't know.
It would be like them to do that. Yeah.
But a cool thing about all the hunters of the five that we encounter, they all seem to have their own brand of like weaponry and tools.
Yeah.
Connor was very much like, I think you said this before, a chemistry student. He very much was distilling things in his little van. He was concocting stuff to take on vampires. He would set traps. Whereas Galen Vaughn, another hunter of the five we encounter in that same season, is very much like hunter-gatherer, tracker through the woods. He throws bolas to trip you up. He sets like field traps. It's all very cool, interesting physical stuff.
And Connor walked around with those fingerless gloves that he had soaked in vervain, so he would like introduce himself and shake people's hands, and then if your hand burned at the touch, he'd know this is a vampire and immediately go for the kill.
Boom. And that's, yes, the other key thing is that like relentless, the Brotherhood of the Five, because their nature as supernatural hunters, they have this supernatural drive to kill vampires, something that is not necessarily under their control. In fact, arguably, it affects them as people, increases their propensity to just hunt vampires indiscriminately. And we see this with Connor, as you say, who sort of just mows through Mystic Falls trying to kill every vampire in sight. We see this in Jeremy when he becomes a hunter, when his behavior towards his sister Elena changes, because Elena in this season has become a vampire. So that is an interesting aspect to the hunter's instinct, as they refer to it. Despite being immune to vampires' charms, they aren't immune to magic. Magic still very much affects them.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is the thing I'm saying about the supernatural creatures we're discussing today are still very much like mortal people. They have regular lives. They can be killed by mortal means. And yeah, they can be manipulated even if it's not by vampires.
We never get the chance to see, although I would assume that it's true, but we never get to see whether or not the supernatural hunters of the five are immune to Silas's psychic powers, which are different to compulsion. For example, Silas's telepathy can't be blocked by ingesting vervain. So since the Brotherhood of the Five was sort of maybe created to deal with him, it would make sense for them to be immune to his powers. But by the time Silas gets out, they're all dead.
I would assume yes, because when they get to Nova Scotia, where Silas is buried, I believe the hunters see through whatever like illusion stuff is going on. Because there's a lot of weird vibes when they're on the island, and that's also the reason they bring Jeremy down to Silas's grave, because the hunter with the mark arc. As you say, they were also somewhat created for this purpose to kill Silas. He was needed to magically open the tomb where Silas was being kept. But also, I think Shane's plan was that, like, they would be the ones to be able to see through whatever Silas's illusions were. Because when Bonnie sees her grandmother, or so she thinks, down there in the caves, Jeremy's like, what are you talking about? Your grandmother's not here. So I think they can see through. But
the way Jeremy explains that, which we'll put a pin in for later, the way Jeremy explains that is, Bonnie, if your grandmother was here, I'd be able to see her because she's the person that he knew before she died, and
he's a medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that does throw a wrench in the works.
So it's like, I would assume that they're immune to Silas's powers, but we never get to see it because...
Explicitly, yeah.
I mean, Jeremy is... Maybe we do see it and I've just forgotten, because isn't Jeremy resurrected by the time Silas is the main character in season 5?
Yes, in season 5, when Silas tries to... Yeah, you're absolutely right, because Silas and Jeremy do encounter very early on in season 5, and Jeremy tells him, because Jeremy is a hunter at that point, and he's like, you can't compel me, you can't control me. So what are you without your psychic powers? Weaker than a vampire, slower than a person. Like, he was just like, you can't face me. And then he does face him and win, which kind of pissed me off. Because I was like, Silas should be useless without his psychic powers. He is immortal, but he's not like strong or agile. And he manages to pwn Jeremy. And I was just like, this is... I don't know, guys, but... I'm not writing the show. But yes, that does confirm that Jeremy's immune to Silas's psychic powers.
Okay. Good.
Right. The one other thing about them is the Hunter's Curse, which is just a nice little fail-safe in case they're not able to carry out one of their missions, which is killing as many vampires as they can. If you, as a vampire, kill one of the Brotherhood of the Five, you are afflicted by the Hunter's Curse, which essentially slowly drives you insane. It seems it's torturing you with, the sins of your life and your actions as a vampire, maybe based on how you perceive yourself, it's unclear. And it gives you visions and hallucinations, and your behavior becomes more erratic until at the end of the line, the chances are you do kill yourself. Unless you're Klaus Michelson and you can't die and you just kind of withstand it for 50 years and you keep moving.
I mean, he barely withstood it. I think it's possible he even tried to end his own life, but
we get nothing on it, which is a shame, because that would be really interesting stuff. It's like, what were those 52 years like?
I think Caroline asks him, and he tells her exactly how long it was, and he says, it was the only time in my life that I ever was like aware of the passing of time. I guess his vampire life.
Wow.
Like that he ever truly felt time, and I'm like, wow, and that was decades.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Klaus is the way he is. No, he was already messed up.
It's not. You're falling into the trap. He sucked long before that. But yeah, I think that's about as much as there is to hunters. I don't know if you can think of anything else that's like important about them.
Their nature as supernatural creatures, because you said one of their powers is being immune to vampire compulsion, which would make sense for hunters, and it certainly makes sense for how they're immune to Silas's psychic manipulation. But we know that in the show, in general, supernatural creatures... asterisk. But in general, supernatural creatures are immune to vampire compulsion, which is, it's kind of lazy, because it was cool when it was like a witch thing, because it was like witches are, powerful in their own right, and then we learned that witches created vampires, so it makes sense they'd be immune. And then it was like werewolves are immune, and it was like, okay, werewolf vampire rivalry. And then it was like, oh no, anyone who's supernatural is immune to vampire compulsion. It does at least stick to the rules of the universe in that when Jeremy dies and Elena is in denial and saying, oh, don't worry, the Gilbert ring that he was wearing will bring him back, everybody else is like, you know how Jeremy's like no longer able to be compelled? Doesn't that mean he's supernatural enough that the Gilbert ring won't work on him anymore?
Yeah.
And it turns out they're right.
The Gilbert ring, which only works on mortal creatures, on human beings, or I guess only works for human beings, does not work for Jeremy when he dies. So yeah, that is important. What is the other...
If you kill someone wearing a Gilbert ring, will they come back? Which I assume would be true for hunters because they're supernatural.
If they killed someone wearing a Gilbert ring, then they would come back. Yes. So I guess in terms of supernatural hunters, though, one last addendum, and it's a very large addendum, is that outside of the Brotherhood of the Five, the other type of supernatural hunter in this world is the Huntress, which was created in a very similar way, but using very different magic. We did just have an episode on Reyna Cruz, who is the supernatural vampire huntress, where the Brotherhood of the Five were made by traditional witch magic. Reyna Cruz was made by shamanic magic, which is not really something we explore a lot in the show, so it's tough to make any comparisons. But she is significantly stronger and more agile than the Brotherhood of the Five ever were. And she has a long-livedness to her because the shamans who created her sacrificed their lives to give her multiple lives to carry out her mission in hunting vampires. She's also immune to vampire compulsion, but where the Brotherhood of the Five is susceptible to magic, Reyna herself is not. At least she's not susceptible to offensive magic directly cast against her. So that's pretty cool. And where they, have their tools and their weapons, but all like mundane stuff, she has a mystical weapon called the Phoenix Sword, which she can use to mark vampires so that once she's marked them, she can hunt them down wherever they are. She becomes linked to them and she can track them down. And when she stabs vampires with the sword, it pulls their soul into the Phoenix Stone at the end of that sword and puts them in this supernatural hell/rehab facility. Very interesting stuff. Go watch season 7. But yeah, she's also linked to that sword, so if she loses the sword, she can find that too. A lot of supernatural linking going on with Reyna.
And she can scry.
Yeah.
When she's marked someone with her sword. We later learn that she's literally having visions of what Stefan is up to for like the 3 years that she is unable to hunt him and kill him.
Vaguely see through their eyes, get glimpses of what they're doing, flashes of their psyche and their emotional state. It is a very there's an aspect of self-sacrifice when it comes to it goes back to being a hunter in the sense of, which is interesting because of what she says later about the way she views vampires. It's like an animal, it's beneath you, but it is still a danger and whatever. Hunters who are really proper traditionalist hunters have this relationship with the animals they hunt, and they make sure to treat it with respect. And even when they kill an animal, you use every part of the animal, you don't let it go to waste. You don't really hunt for sport, even though there is an element of grandiosity to the skill of hunting. That skill is used in service, and so there's this element of equivalence between the hunter and the animal that they are hunting. It's a very interesting relationship where it's in order to hunt these vampires, she must become linked to them and she must understand them in order to hunt them down and kill them, which is an interesting aspect of the huntress rather than the hunters.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Also, the mechanics of her longevity. We get various kinds of longevity in this world. We've got vampires who don't age at all. We've got the original immortal Silas, and then later on we learn his lover Amara is also immortal, who also just don't physically age. Both of those consume blood from the living and have healing factors. We've got witches who can slow their aging to such a significant degree that they can live 100 years and still look 60 tops.
Yeah, yeah.
But with Reyna, it's that she's linked to the 8 Everlastings, who are the shamans who created her. And each time she suffers a physical death, one of their magically preserved bodies will wither away, and then she will burst into flame and reincarnate in the same form that she was when she first became the huntress. That includes dying, I guess, of old age.
Yeah.
Because when we first meet her, she's quite old. She doesn't die of natural causes, but I assume that if she had been left there to die of natural causes, she would have rebooted again.
Yeah.
And every time she dies and one of the 8 Everlastings' life force brings her back, she comes back stronger than she was before.
Yeah, that's that phoenix imagery there where it is to die and then be reborn from your own ashes. Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Yeah.
She's, like you said in the Reyna episode, easily the most powerful hunter, easily the most interesting. And she is the only of her type until she dies in season 7 and passes on the huntress nature to Bonnie. There's an exchange made because Bonnie was dying and they needed the last everlasting life to go to her. But along with it came all the abilities and all the drive of the huntress, because like the Brotherhood of the Five, Reyna is driven to hunt vampires whether she wants to or not. And so Bonnie, for a brief time in the last episode of that season, becomes a supernatural huntress as well.
Also, the reason Bonnie ends up sick is because Rhaina's resistance to magic also seems to have the side effect of making her blood toxic to witches.
Very similar to Doppelgängers, where it's like your blood has magical use, unlike the Brotherhood of the Five, who are just dudes. It really is just like, she's just so much cooler than you guys. I'm sorry. But yeah, and I think that's all on Hunters.
I liked the Hunters a lot. Initially I was like, I wish they had a more distinct name. I always come back to the naming conventions of this universe. Initially I was like, I wish they had a more distinct name because we've already used the word vampire hunter to describe Alaric, who was like a hunter by profession, and then to describe Michael, who was a vampire but also a hunter of vampires. So it was like ambiguous. And then Vampalaric, who was, both. And then eventually we got to Rhaina, who is like the only female one that we meet in this universe. Don't know whether that means potentials of the five can't be women. Don't know. But because they just call her the Huntress, it was nice that it was like, oh, that she gets to just have that title because also she's the only woman who's a vampire hunter that we've seen in this show.
That's what I was going to say. Even if they don't get like a cool name for the type of thing they are, Brotherhood of the Five as a title sounds really cool.
Yeah.
It sounds very esoteric and arcane. The Huntress Rhaina Cruz as a title. That shit runs through the whole season and scares everyone. So that's also really cool. It's just like, you're talking about the Huntress, it's Rhaina Cruz. Her name carries weight, and I really like that. It's interesting, we talk about the gender of the Hunters and then the Huntress. Similar to like, with the werewolves and the witches that we've discussed before in like the Tyler episodes and just like generally, where it's like seemingly this mystical thing tends towards a certain gender because of the sort of stereotypical assumption that like the rage and the violence and the physicality of werewolves associated with maleness and masculinity, hunting, right, as a trade, as a sport, as a skill, is associated with masculinity and maleness, even though now that historians look back and it turns out, people who are looking at remains of older societies were projecting their own biases of the society at the time as to who could be carrying out hunting duties versus gathering duties. And it's like, it wasn't actually all men hunting or all women gathering. It was like needs basis and all this stuff. And it's like, there were women who hunted, there were men who gathered. But because we associate that stereotypically with men, it's like all the hunters are men. And does that then inform the story in terms of, does it just pass down men? Because Rhaina Cruz, though a huntress, her father, Vicente, was of the Brotherhood of the Five, a man himself. Everyone we meet from the original five who were all men, which it's like, it was the 10th century, right? 11th century, rather. Crusade times-ish, men of the Lord or whatever. And then it's Vicente, and then it's Connor, it's Galen, it's Jeremy. All dudes. But assumedly, there have been several over the course of a millennium. They have mortal lifespan, so it must have passed on several times. Connor, who has a potential for this this army soldier person who he knew when he toured in Iraq, also a man. So it's like, seemingly no women, but also it's like, despite not being able to make that definitive assumption, it seems it's mostly men. And then the Huntress, an exception made by different magic,
made by a male spellcaster, interestingly, while the Brotherhood of the Five were made by a female witch.
Yes, the inversion there is very cool. God, Rhaina, such rich potential thematic, like
spin-off show for Rhaina.
Oh, if only. I wish we got more of her. She's so cool. Just Rhaina on the road, Rhaina Diaries from the 170 years she was like moving through society slaying vampires. Show me Hunter x Hunter, show me Rhaina in love. Anyway.
The mechanics of the hunters as human beings in the supernatural world who have been imbued with magical powers in order to kill vampires. It's very reminiscent of Buffy and the Slayer line and how that works. So I think that's cool. I mean, as I said last time in the Rhaina episode, I can't go into too much detail because you haven't finished Buffy, but maybe I'll slot it into another episode. Maybe I'll slot it into a Bonnie episode when we discuss her being descended from the witch who created the Five.
Surely by then I will have finished these last two seasons of Buffy. I hope. Touch wood. I guess moving on from hunters then, on to a more commonly discussed supernatural being, probably the most commonly discussed, doppelgangers.
Yay!
So, doppelgangers. Doppelgangers is interesting because it's like sirens, right? It's a supernatural archetype, but at the end of the day, it's just like two people. In doppelgangers, it's... At least with doppelgangers, it's like two bloodlines, but at the end of the day, like, this shit doesn't exist outside of you people, so it's crazy to be like, the austerity of doppelgangers. It's like, yeah, the Petrovas and the Salvatores. Okay.
It's crazy that person at Alaric's alma mater, or I guess Isabel's alma mater as well, had like,
Yes.
yeah, it was Isabel's,
Information.
had like research on doppelgangers. And I'm like, you've been researching Amara and Silas's lines? Because that's all there is.
How did you get half of this shit, girly? What are your sources? Who are you citing? And please tell me I need to find them. And there's every possibility that at that time they intended for doppelgangers to be a more widespread phenomenon, because doppelgangers exist in our real life, sans the supernatural, extra of it. There is the situation. I think the stat I read ages ago that I don't have a citation for. I guess I shouldn't be a hypocrite and rag on Miss Nora Dark from season 2. But I think.
Wow, once the CW has you, they keep your number.
Yeah, they really are like, we've got you on call for every guest part that we have on every show. I think the stat at one point was 1 in 7. No, what am I saying? At least 7 people in the world, somewhere in the world, look just like you. Which, I don't know how accurate that is when you consider if that's true for everyone, then that means there are only 1 billion unique faces in the world, and then the other 6 billion are just like really, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, was that stat real? Who knows? But doppelgangers exist in real life where there are people who look uncannily alike. You think of as simple as like Javier Bardem and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who are just like alarmingly identical looking men. I don't know if you know those actors.
I don't know them.
So Javier Bardem, have you seen No Country for Old Men?
I haven't.
Oh, you've seen The Little Mermaid. You've seen the new Little Mermaid.
Yes.
He's King Triton.
He has a doppelganger?
Yes. Have you seen Supernatural?
I haven't seen all of Supernatural. Let me Google Javier Bardem's doppelganger.
Right. And then Google Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Oh, him. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
He's in The Walking Dead, right? Or something.
He's in The Walking Dead. He's Negan, yes. And then you get like Samara Weaving and Bobby's name. Margot Robbie. And then that other actress. You always see all the pictures of all these actors who are lined up, and it's like, those people look hauntingly alike. So it's like doppelgangers exist in our real world, and it's a pretty common thing. But it's like, in this show, they're magical, and it's only these bloodlines.
Victoria Justice, who is sometimes described as looking very similar to Nina
like
Dobrev.
Jennifer Morrison.
More so when they were both younger.
I think we said different people. Who did you say?
I said Victoria Justice looks like Nina Dobrev.
Oh, I said Victoria Justice looks like Jennifer Morrison, the main Emma in Once Upon a Time.
Emma, she kind of does,
right?
But I guess the blonde hair was throwing me off.
Of course, yes, hair color completely different, but like face-wise,
there's an actor with a doppelganger who these people we've described all look very similar, but this person was like identical, and I have forgotten his name. I'm so annoyed, but I was like, how is this possible? One of them is deceased now. It's a black guy. One of them is deceased. The other one is still alive. They look exactly alike. And I was like, how are you not one person? I know who one of them is. I think I know who the living one is. He wasn't Buffy. His name is D.B. Woodside. Okay.
Oh, I know D.B. Woodside.
Woodside.
He's in Lucifer.
Yeah. He plays him in a deal. He has a doppelganger who I was like, wait, you're not the same person. His doppelganger's name.
It was on Twitter.
Yes, Albert Ezerzer. I don't know how to say it. He looks exactly like him, and they're apparently not related. I don't know how it's possible.
What's his name?
Albert Ezerzer.
Wait, that's a picture of D.B. Woodside, though.
Google a picture of both of them. Hold on.
Hold on. No. That can't be a different person.
These are two different people.
No. You're not gonna lie to me. I'm pretty sure I'm just looking at pictures of... Yes, this is both pictures of DB Woodside. This is not the guy.
Oh, okay. Then I was tricked by an internet hoax, I guess.
Guys, was this just a hoax that everyone fell for?
Maybe it was. Maybe he was never real.
Oh, no.
That's fine. I can put my soul to rest now.
I'm on a Reddit thread now.
You know what? This is us being punished for the Alex Gilbert.
The Alex Gilbert drama. Yes, we tempted fate. And now Janus himself is looking down upon us and going, stop your shit. Stop your shit right now.
There is always a price for magic.
In any case, the point being, so let's just get into doppelgangers because we spent too long trying to figure out celebrity doppelgangers.
A real set of real life doppelgangers whose similarity makes sense because they're related and from a heavily inbred family. Were the last Tsar of Russia, Nikolai Romanov.
Okay.
And his, I think, second cousin, or they might have been third cousins, Queen Elizabeth's grandfather, George V. They looked exactly
their parents
like,
were siblings.
But no, their parents weren't siblings. But I think they were both grandchildren of Queen Victoria, and already the European royal families were heavily inbred anyway. So it makes sense that you would have like a cousin who looks exactly like you when your family is infamous for inbreeding.
Passing down there, some far too identical genes. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense. But yes, doppelgangers in this world, specifically, the first we hear of it is, of course, with Elena, a main character who turns out to look identical to Catherine, who lived at least 150 years before her. And they do put emphasis on the fact that, like, everyone is like, God, you look just like Catherine. They mistake her for Catherine when they see her. It's meant to be, like, at least in the show, a supernatural likeness. It's like down to the wire, you look exactly like this person from however long ago. Which, again, you could argue is a thing that is common in real life because lots of people are like exact echoes of their ancestors.
I think in the first season, as far as we know, there is no supernatural thing given to the doppelganger.
Yeah.
And with the source material in the books, Elena is, I think, distantly descended from Catherine, and that's the reason they look so much alike. It's just like, oh, distant ancestor who has the same face.
Right, yeah. It's just meant to be like conflict as these Salvatore brothers entangle with another woman that looks identical to the woman that they were entangled with years ago that split them up as brothers. So... Yeah.
And it's not until we get to season 2 where it's like, oh, she's the doppelganger.
Yeah. So at that point, she is the doppelganger, supposedly the only doppelganger, or at least part of... Well, no, yeah, at the time, the only doppelganger. They do refer to Catherine as a doppelganger as it pertains to magical use, because the reason Elena's being hunted down by Klaus, the original, is because he was eluded by Catherine, who turned herself into a vampire to escape him and to no longer be useful for his plans. So at least in that respect, you then learn that she was a doppelganger as well of Tatia, who existed in the 10th century in the time of Klaus, Elijah, and all their siblings still being human. Doppelgangers down the bloodline, identical to someone who lived however long before them. Their blood is useful for witch spells. It seems to be broadly true, though I like to think of it or at least I used to like to think of it before future stuff happened, that like in Esther using Tatia's blood, because at the time they didn't know her to be a doppelganger, right? It was just this girl that Klaus and Elijah were both in love with. She used Tatia's blood to turn them into vampires, right? That was the vibe that was going on. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, she used Tatia's blood to turn them into vampires.
How did she do that? What do they mean by that? Because they walked that girl in for them to drink from.
That was when they were already in transition. She, I guess, extracted whatever amount of blood she needed from Tatia, did her mojo on it, then fed that blood to her children and her husband. She tricked her children into drinking it, then killed them with that blood in their system, and then they awoke as vampires in transition, and then completed the transition by just feeding off that random girl.
It's never said why doppelganger magic is so good as an ingredient, at least up until this point, so you just assume it's inherently magical. But I had assumed because Esther used it to create create vampirism. Now, whenever a spell needs to be done relating to vampirism or a curse needs to be broken relating to vampirism, the blood of her doppelgangers, of Tatia's doppelgangers, the person who was used to create vampirism, would be the blood you need to break something there. It made sense in that sort of closed loop.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, rather than doppelganger blood being useful just in general for magic, because it's like, why? I guess because you're a magical occurrence, right? You're a supernatural creature.
Magical and rare.
Yeah.
I know when Esther later uses Elena, who's still human at that point, uses her blood to make Vampilaric. It's now the second time that she's asked for Elena's blood, because I think first she uses it to link the original siblings.
Yes.
Then she forcibly takes it when she wants to make Vampilaric, and she says that, these are the hazards of being the doppelganger. Your blood is a powerful binding agent in a witch's spell.
That's what I'm saying is like, even in that spell, it's relating to vampirism specifically. She is creating a vampire. She's once again doing the creation of vampirism like she did with Tatia's blood. So it's odd that she says for just a witch's spell general. Maybe she wasn't generalizing, but from the dialogue, it seems like
I guess I assumed that she was like hearkening back to even Tatia, whose blood she had used apropos of nothing.
Stop your nonsense. You say something one time and you can never live it down.
But you know what? I mean, let's if we take it further and we let's get into what the doppelgangers actually turn out to be.
So essentially, later on in the show, when we find out, because again, it's presented to us, it's Elena. Elena's a doppelganger of Catherine. Catherine's a doppelganger of Tatia. They are each like 500 years apart, roughly, and their blood is useful for magic, and they were each used to either create vampires or break a vampire-related curse, or attempted to be used. Later, we find out, and this is season 5, that in fact, they are all doppelgangers of this original person from 1,000 years before Tatia.
Yes.
Amara, who was the friend / handmaiden of this powerful witch, Kitsia, who was in love with this man named Silas. They were both witches. They were travelers. Or the schism hadn't happened yet, but that's what they were. And they created immortality. They created a spell or like an elixir or potion that would make them immortal, and they would drink it together at their marriage ceremony and be together forever. Silas, like every man ever, betrayed her. And had an affair with her best friend. Kitsia found out about this and said, okay, so I could just kill her. I'm not a girl's girl, so I'm just gonna punish her, and then I'm gonna see what I do about this man. But effectively, it's not important what exactly happens, but effectively, they took the immortality spell, Silas and Amara, so they now live forever. But that is a violation of the balance of nature. Go back to the Gilbert Journal on witches to get our thoughts on whatever the balance of nature is. But effectively, one of the tenets of balance in terms of nature is the maintenance of mortal life. Nature abhors vampires because they're biologically mortal. Pre-vampires, this was the first thing where nature stood up and said, what are you doing? What is that nonsense you're putting on my earth? We will not be able to stand for this. So, it was unable to kill Silas and Amara because they were now immortal. Oh, kill is a strong word. Nature doesn't necessarily have like strong agency and desire. It's like they would never die. So nature started to make mortal copies of them as their like bloodlines continued through time. With each mortal copy, with each doppelganger, each shadow self that was born from their bloodline, they would then live out their lives and die in the place of this immortal creature that cannot die. And through that, the balance of nature was kept. Even though this immortal creature is a violation, because nature keeps creating doppelgangers, they sort of keep stacking up. For each lifetime that the immortal being lives, the doppelganger will live a lifetime and then die and balance the scales for the immortal creature. And that is how we got doppelgangers. Natural phenomenon that existed as a result of the immortality spell. And so we learn that not just the Petrova bloodline, which is Amara, the original immortal, and then Tatia, Catherine, Elena, and assumedly several other doppelgangers in between them. It is also the Salvatore bloodline from Silas, the original immortal. Stefan is the next one that we know for certain. And then Tom Avery, who we meet later in season 5, is another doppelganger.
I've often wondered how exactly the bloodline works, because as you say, with the gaps between Elena, Catherine, and Tatia, it seems to be this 500-year cycle, which often made fans wonder if maybe there had been a doppelganger between Tatia and Amara for that, like, you know, Amara is 2,000 years ago, then someone 1,500 years ago, then Tati 1,000 years ago, so on and so forth. Which could have been possible. It certainly seemed with Amara's doppelgangers, it seemed like there was one direct bloodline, because whenever that issue came up, it was like, let's quickly make sure the audience knows that this woman had a child before she died / became a vampire. Like it's said that, Elijah and Klaus were both in love with Tatia, even though she'd already had a child with another man. So it's like, okay, so Tatia had a child. That child is Catherine's ancestor. We learned that Catherine had a baby before she became a vampire. That's Nadia, Elena's ancestor. But with the Silas side, it's like, Tom is not descended from Stefan Salvatore at all.
No. And so we have to assume it's like, as long as you're connected to the original, it's like spreading roots of a tree coming down. As long as you are connected to that original root of Silas. Maybe Silas had like a brother who had children that we never met.
Yeah.
Something like that, where it's like, as long as you're tied to the original line, you can potentially be, when you're born, the doppelganger of that generation.
Yeah, because Silas and Amara definitely didn't have any kids between the two of them.
No.
The line must have just popped up somewhere.
We don't get anything about whether the immortals could have reproduced.
Oh, yeah.
One of them is very quickly dead, and the other one is turned into the anchor.
Because they didn't even have to die to become immortal. They just drank an elixir, unlike vampires who are undead, and it makes sense that they can't procreate.
Right.
But just learning through the existence of Tom Avery that at most, doppelgangers just need to be like distantly related to each other and part of the same family tree. Like many things in Vampire Diaries, as the seasons go on, it makes you look back at previous stuff and be like, so there's a solution to this problem. Klaus spent centuries angry at Catherine for, killing herself and ruining his plans to his knowledge, without having had kids, and thus ending the doppelganger line. And it's like, maybe some distant cousin of Catherine's had already been producing other doppelgangers long before Elena was discovered.
Get her family tree and manually look for the next doppelganger. At most, you wait 100 years. Because Kitsia says every generation, right? And it makes sense with how they explain what the balance of nature is doing. Every generation, there must be a doppelganger. Like when a doppelganger dies, the next doppelganger must be born, almost Avatar cycle style. It's like, in order to keep balancing those scales, each generation, a new doppelganger must be born. It wouldn't be exact, because it's not like it's not like controlling destiny. They will argue in season 5 that fate or destiny or whatever is bringing the doppelgangers together. We will not be getting into that in this episode. But it's not like nature can go, yes, now you must procreate, so that 9 months from now, when this doppelganger dies, the instant I don't think it's doing that. I think it's just that in the next generation, though, it'll be like the first available child after the last doppelganger has died. Okay, you will be born a doppelganger. There must be at least, or rather on average, like 20 doppelgangers down each line.
Yeah.
If you say, give or take 100 years each generation, Which
just makes me think, if in each generation both bloodlines are producing a doppelganger, was there a Stefan lookalike in Catherine's time who would have been the same age as her somewhere out there?
Mm-hmm, certainly.
Because we have Tom Avery and Elena, who are, I guess, the same age, like vaguely the same age, maybe. And then Stefan Salvatore, obviously over a century older than them. Maybe there was a descendant from Catherine's family tree also running around somewhere on Earth.
Yeah.
Who was made for Stefan.
Possibly, because of, if you pull the thread back, because of Klaus's interference in their bloodlines, potentially that got shifted, where like Catherine got yanked away, went off on her journey. She ends up meeting Stefan at the wrong time. She's now 500 at that point, or like 400, 350, 400. Do the math yourself. And interrupts him from meeting his own commensurate Petrova doppelganger. But also it's like, yeah, they were existing in the world, but there's no certainty that they would have met.
Yeah.
So, what does that mean? Again, because
They claim that fate wants to pull the doppelgangers together, and I'm like, well, it seemed that fate waited like 300 years before Catherine Pierce met Stefan Salvatore.
yeah, clearly fate's not on the shift. Fate is AFK. Fate is on a long lunch break because this is the first time we've heard of them meeting. I guess fate can't do anything about technology, right? It's like, when did they invent the first ship that could sail across the seas?
I mean, yeah, but
No, actually, no. The
Stefan's
Salvatores were
from
in
an
Italy.
Italian family, yeah.
Yeah, there's no excuse here. They were actually very close by to each other before the Mystic Falls of it all. Wow.
Yeah, Catherine had already traveled from Bulgaria to England and back. She had definitely passed, she'd passed the time zone that Italy is in.
She definitely vacationed in Rome. Was Rome still around at the time? It was still the 1500s.
Well, I mean, the city of Rome was still there. If not,
Yeah,
the
but I mean, like,
Empire.
the empire, yeah.
The empire was definitely gone by the 1500s.
Oh, when does the burning... Am I thinking of the Ottoman Empire? Is that the one that was, like, around until...
Probably, because that's the one that Dracula, the real-life Dracula, was
Right.
involved with.
Well, involved with in the sense that... How again? I haven't actually read the original Dracula. I've just read this gender-bent Dracula in which she has a brother who was in love with the Sultan.
No, I meant Vlad Tepes, like the historical Vlad Dracula.
No, I know, but I'm like, yeah, how was he involved with... That's what I'm saying, because I don't know. My only knowledge is that Vlad had a younger brother who was in love, gay love with the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire at the time. And now I'm like, possibly that was true?
In real life, I think Vlad was sent to like foster with someone in the Ottoman Empire and might have been like, raised there. But also he then went back and went to war with those people. So
Exactly. Did Vlad Tepes have a brother?
He did. He had a brother who was known as Radu the Handsome.
Radu, yes.
That's all I know about him.
In the book, he's the one, him and Mahmud are like gay for each other. Well, he's gay for Mahmud, but Mahmud is like, yeah, I'm kind of giving like queer-ish vibes, but also you're more in love with me than I am infatuated with you, so I'll kind of string you along for a bit. And at the end of it, Radu goes to become a really fastidious Christian because he's so ashamed. It's so wild. Anyway,
So real.
that book was crazy.
So true.
Moving on.
What I wanted to say, and I think I forgot to say this in the Silence episode, and I was like, in my brain, I was like, put a pin in it, we'll get back to it in the grab bag episode when we mentioned doppelgangers.
Yeah.
But when we briefly discussed like the mechanics of, why did nature need to create this version of them that could die and would die when it wouldn't affect, the two living immortals in any way. And then you explained and made a good case for it, and I was like, okay, satisfied. But what I would have loved, activating fan fiction, would have been if the point of the doppelgangers, who were two mortal beings created to be copies of Silas and Amara, would have been, some sort of magical host body that you could transplant Silas and Amara's souls into and then kill them in those host bodies. And that would have been the reason for them existing. I feel like Ketsia would have been petty enough to do that.
That is
But
actually really... Yeah. Oh, what
But
am
she
I
didn't
thinking
make the
of that has that
doppelgangers,
sort of
nature
vibe?
did.
Yeah, no, that was not her intention at all. Frankly, she didn't intend for them to be immortal. She was making that shit for herself and her fiancé, who then abandoned her. Ketsia had nothing to do with that shit. But like, what is this? Something like that where it's like there are these avatar bodies who are born to like hold this particular deific or like extraplanar entity, and then that was how you kill them. I feel like that happened in something.
Really, I would love to read or watch that, because I always thought that was like a cool little fanficky idea that I had.
Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe some other time.
It would have been another way to make it all about Elena. Like Ketsia wants to put Amara into Elena's body so that she can kill her.
Certainly, I would have been more interested in that than like the back and forth nonsense they were doing with Stefan and Elena. Oh, fate's drawing them together. It's like, no, let's have a practical purpose to it and be like, this is how you defeat Silas. But the thing is, Silas is gone by that point. So it's like, all the doppelganger stuff it is once again their blood. The only other time beyond the Michelson stuff where the doppelgangers are important are in season 5 when the travelers need their blood to undo all of spirit magic, which is like, okay, Why? Because it's inherently magical. That's why. That's all there is to it. I don't know.
Oh, speaking of doppelganger blood, when we first hear about, Tatia, who I think is not named at that point, maybe she is, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But when we first hear about Tatia, we assume that, she was killed when we assume she was killed when Esther made the hybrid curse, because it was like, oh, Klaus needs the blood of a doppelganger. Why? We don't know. That's just how the spell works. And then as we learn more in season 3, it's like, oh, okay, so there was a person who Catherine Pierce is the doppelganger of. Her blood was used to seal Klaus's werewolf powers away, and that was why he needed to sacrifice a doppelganger to break the curse.
Am I confusing it? Am I making that up? That
No.
she was used to make them vampires? Is she both?
No, I'm getting it. Then, as Rebecca explains the lore of the originals, it's like, oh no, Tatia's blood was used to make the originals. And then it's like, it's implied that that's when she was sacrificed. So it's like, wait, was she already dead? Did Esther use like a corpse's blood to bind Klaus's werewolf side? And then, when we finally get to the originals, we see that, oh no, Tatia is like alive and well in the early days of the Michelsons being vampires.
Right.
And she even says to Elijah, when your mother asked for my blood to do a spell, she said nothing of this dark magic. I didn't realize this is what would happen.
Yes, because they bring Elena back for a cute little flashback in the originals. Well, not bring her back. It's at the time season 5 of the Vampire Diaries is happening, so she's still very much there. But yeah, she shows up in the originals doing her little English accent.
It wasn't as good as the one she did in Catherine's British days.
No, which is so strange.
She was out of practice, I guess. I don't know.
I guess so.
But what's funny about that final reveal is that it kind of does prove the theory that, oh, Esther used a corpse to bind Klaus, because then we know, young vampire Elijah then feeds off Tatia and kills her, and then Esther takes that dead body once she's dealt with Elijah and his little red door. She takes that dead body and I guess uses its remaining blood to bind Klaus's werewolf.
Oh, I would think there would be like magically you can't use dead blood to do spells, but I guess not.
Apparently, recently deceased human doppelganger blood is still magical enough,
still viable,
to do the things that vampire doppelganger blood can't do, until we meet the travelers who can use Stefan and Elena's now vampire doppelganger blood to do their spells.
Right. They hold their 100 hands together as travelers and chant to like reverse it and make it like viable. In fact, they're like, you know what it is? It's because for whatever reason their blood isn't viable and they have to kill every other existing doppelganger to then be able to use their one. That's why they have to go find Tom Avery and kill him to make sure that their blood is good. So I do think that like normally their blood wouldn't have been useful, but the travelers said we're making sure that shit is good. Which is cool, If the travelers were at all interesting, that would be really dope. But truly, it's like they're doing that in this weird trash yard. They're coercing Caroline. Caroline's going along with Enzo. It's like nothing about that storyline outside of that magical mechanical thing is interesting.
I don't know if we've discussed it before in the podcast, but with the doppelgangers, another thing about the doppelgangers that we learn is they are supernatural enough that the Gilbert ring won't work for them, and that if you kill that if they kill someone wearing a Gilbert ring, the ring will bring that person back. But they are not supernatural enough to avoid being compelled.
Yep.
Which was like, that's
they
not
get
fair.
Every raw deal of the supernatural bag. Literally. Other than your blood being useful, I think I said it before, you are a supernatural spice can. You add some zhuzh to a witch's brew, and that's it. You don't get any powers, you don't get any immunities. Like, you can't even use the supernatural relics that are meant to protect humans, even though you are still effectively human. It's crazy.
So, it feels a bit contrived, because it's like we get to a point in the series, in the later seasons, where whenever someone meets a supernatural creature, they're like, I'm not even going to try and compel you. You're supernatural, so you can't be compelled. Like, people will say that on screen. And it's like, I feel like the only reason the Gilbert rings don't work for a doppelganger is because it was that season 2 thing of, we have to save Elena from Klaus's sacrifice, and there's seemingly no way to do that.
And there needs to be no way. Yeah. Yes. Even though it's like, you could just say Klaus would pull the ring off. It's so easy. It's not a fail-safe plan, the Gilbert ring. It's not this insurmountable thing. Many people have said, I can just chop your hand off. In fact, Catherine does it in the first season. She chops John's fingers off so that when she kills him, he'll die. It's not a crazy thing to be like, the ring still works for doppelgangers, but Klaus will just yank it off you before sacrificing you.
Or they could have said, doppelgangers' magic is in their blood. That wouldn't make sense. I'm going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
I'm going in the opposite direction of the point I wanted to make.
You're helping their point. No.
I was gonna say like Klaus sucked all the magical blood out of her, so her magic is gone. But then I was like, no, but then that's why the ring should work.
Then it should be human. Then the ring should definitely keep her alive. And also, frankly, why is Klaus able to suck all the blood out of her and then she dies to complete this curse? But when Silas sucks all the blood out of Catherine, she can survive, but it still works. Okay.
The whole and this is not specific to Vampire Diaries. This is modern vampire fiction in general. The idea that latching yourself onto someone's neck for like 2 minutes tops and sucking with the amount of force that a human mouth is capable of sucking with will, quote unquote, drain a body completely of blood is ridiculous.
In vampires' cases, I assume they can generate a bit more, Newton count there. But in the terms of Silas, who's just a regular guy.
I mean, nobody ever says that. It's always just like, we found 8 bodies completely drained of blood. The vampires are back in town. It's like, they were completely drained of blood? Sometimes Damon doesn't even look like he gets it all. Like, half of it dribbles out of his mouth.
Maybe that's the problem. They're sucking it so strongly, so powerfully that it's all just oozing down into the ground. You only get a third. And also it's I think as a human body, there's a minimum amount of blood that you need to just be alive. So I don't think you need to be exsanguinated fully to die. I think there's a point at which...
Why do they always put that line in there, completely drained of blood? I'm like, you don't need to be completely drained of blood to die.
Frankly, that's fine because it's a vampire's gonna get their fill. They want to sip up every drop. By all means, you're better than Sybil the Siren, who's wasting her food. I'm saying that it's crazy for some. It's even crazier for then Catherine to be exsanguinated and still survive.
You know what it is. The whole cure thing. While we're on the topic, the cure thing makes no sense, and it's definitely not full exsanguination. Even if you want to headcanon that vampires and immortals have super suction powers in their house, because by the time we get to the series finale, Stefan is able to just stick a syringe in Elena, pull out the cure just in that syringe, and then put it into himself, or put it into whoever it gets put into, and that's definitely not all of Elena's blood. So apparently, just the act of physically removing some of the blood from a person who has the cure in them means the magic of the cure has now passed on.
Transfers the whole cure. It's okay. Even Amara, when she got it from Silas, she takes a little sippy, and he survives. And it's guys, what's the point of this? What was the point of establishing that you need to drink the whole cure out of somebody? It's so dumb.
I guess it was another retcon that you look back and you're like, so what you're saying is this could have cured every vampire. I mean, most of them would have died of old age afterwards.
Yeah, we could have daisy-chained it around everybody. Yes. And it's all the people who drink it are people who should die instantly. When it's our relatively young 19 to 21 vampires could have used this to all become human again and didn't.
We could have given it to Abby Bennett, who was distraught at being a vampire at first.
No, she's happy being a vampire now, guys. We can't use it on her. What? Get
another
me out of here.
We needed a reason for Elena to be the choice.
Stop this nonsense. Let her suck that shit out of Elena. I don't care. So stupid. Anyway, this is not the Cure episode. What else can be said about doppelgangers? Again, they're really not that personally exciting. They're just mechanically and as an ingredient is where all the cool stuff comes in.
They're sometimes called a shadow self.
Yeah, and that's, cool language.
Nora Dark
tells
Elena that doppelgangers usually try to undo each other's lives. Don't know where she got that research from, considering that most of these doppelgangers don't seem to be alive at the same
She was
time. Barring
editorializing.
vampirism.
She was writing her little short story at the same time. It's like, girl, can you just give us the journalistic facts? She was on that wiki page about doppelgangers going, doppelgangers feel compelled to, because it's an old concept, an old idea, right? It's usually invoked when we talk about time travel and about clones. That like when you encounter your other self, you are so unsettled by and so like existentially afraid of them that you feel compelled to kill them because it threatens your own personhood and your assertion of self in the world. So that's kind of what they're playing with there in terms of you must undo the other one's life. But also it's like, we're 500 years apart. What about me is gonna... You've lived so long. Catherine, yes, is trying to undo Elena because Catherine's a petty bitch who wants Stefan to herself. It has very little to do with their doppelgangerness.
Yeah, and who wants to trade Elena to Klaus for her own freedom.
Right, there's a lot of like logic lines you can track as to why Catherine wants Elena gone.
See, now if they'd taken my little fan theory of the doppelgangers' bodies are needed to dispose of Silas and Amara's souls, then that would have made sense. The whole they try to undo each other's lives because it's like the doppelgangers are a threat to the original bodies. I will say that in mythology, certain mythologies, seeing a doppelganger was either an instance of some aspect of yourself, like your psyche or your soul, having exited your body, or you seeing this supernatural apparition that was a portent of your impending death.
Ooh, I like that.
It was said that if you saw your doppelganger, it meant you were going to die soon. Even if you didn't interact or like speak, if you just like walked past and saw your own face, it was like, oh, you're not long for this world.
I mean, that kind of plays into that existential threat aspect, right? Where it's like if seeing a double of yourself suggested your own end, you would want to end that thing first. You would want to get rid of that shit so quick to ensure your own survival.
And again, put Silas and Amara in their doppelgangers' bodies and kill them. Because we know that body jumping is a thing in this world.
It's very much a thing, yes. Bonnie's done it, Esther's done it, Esther's done it for herself, Bonnie's done it to someone else. But it is very much an established thing. Yeah, I do like that idea.
Although I guess when you body jump and your own body is still alive, if the body you're possessing dies, you snap back to your own body?
Yeah.
So...
yeah. Strange stuff. More of that in the originals. Watch the originals. It's really good. Yeah, I think we've counted off all the doppelgangers that have existed, at least in the story. Yeah, there's really not much else to be said.
That's all there is to say. For what it's worth, presumably now that Elena has taken the cure and is young enough that having the cure taken out of her won't make her age and die, her blood is back to being magical doppelganger blood.
It's presumed the doppelganger status. So Klaus should very well be able to come back and start up making hybrids again.
Oh no!
So, fortunately for her, he's enraptured in other storylines at that point, doesn't really have the time, He's got bigger problems. But regardless, closing out on doppelgangers and going into ghosts, which is, technicality, right? Supernatural creature, it just means you're dead. It means you died as a supernatural creature.
Yes.
Because the way the world works in the Vampire Diaries, there is the other side, as created by Ketsia, that she made as a filter to catch Silas if he died, so that he would be trapped there and Amara would have gone to peace. That was the vibe of it, right?
Yeah, to peace or hell, depending how Cade felt. But I guess Ketsia didn't know
depending on how
Cade.
Cade felt about what Amara did. Okay, the one biblical sin he kept, he said, I don't like adultery. Get down here. You're going to burn forever.
Cade does feel kind of sexist. It feels like he's always being more harsh towards the women than the men. Like, Kai is like the one man who ends up in hell.
It truly is like Vicky and
Kelly.
what's her mom's name? Kelly Donovan are in there.
Catherine.
Miss Scagliotti from season 8, the temptress whore who tried to tempt her professor and like drunk drove and accidentally committed manslaughter. She must burn in hell forever. It's like, my guy, There are worse people you could be pulling. He makes Stefan make that doctor a woman doctor. So clearly he doesn't think women need to be doctors. Coerces, compels her to kill somebody in the line of duty, and she's going to hell now. I don't know, Kate. It's not looking good for you. Ghosts, yes. If you're a supernatural creature and you die, you go to the other side rather than, passing on to find peace or into oblivion, depending on what you did in life. So all the ghosts in this show are people who were once supernatural in life. They exist in the other side, which is not perceivable. I don't know what the word is there. We as people existing in the world can't see unless you are specially inclined to see. Some witches can sort of see into the spirit realm sometimes. And then, of course, mediums, which we'll discuss in a bit. Seemingly, ghosts sort of move around by themselves. They don't encounter other ghosts on the other side. And they sort of walk this line of like being in this extraplanar realm, but being able to look in on their loved ones, but not really be able to like interact or do anything about it.
Yeah, it seems that they have a tendency to manifest around people who knew them in life and are thinking about them, even if those people can't perceive them. And specifically witches who are on the other side do have free reign and can interact with each other and other supernatural creatures there.
Yes.
Don't know why. Never explained.
No idea.
They're just special. I guess a witch made the other side. That's fine.
Yeah, so it's like, of course, my girls are gonna have free run of the place. Like, come on. Okay, it's mostly my bloodline here. It's all these Bennett witches who keep dying for people's drama. I'm gonna give them whatever they need.
Kitsy was like, if I die and end up on the other side, which she did, she was like, I want to be able
Which
to
she
gloat.
did.
I want to be able to gloat, to find Silas and gloat when he ends up here and be like, psych, Amara is still alive. And if and when she does die, she's just going to go to peace.
So good. But yes, in that vein, because witches still seem to, well, at least some of them still seem to be able to do witchy things. It's not fully clear whether you still have your capabilities that you had as a supernatural creature in life on the other side. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So that's one that's like kind of a wrench in how the other side works.
I mean, Vicky was strong enough to keep Elena from getting out of the car when it was on fire, when she was a ghost that had a stronger foothold. Mason, when he surprised Damon, was able to get the drop on Damon and like knock him out with his werewolf in human form strength. So I think you do keep the powers you kept, at least as far as physical powers go. Vampire ghosts have a tendency to not make the vampire face. They can, we eventually learn. They just don't, and I guess it's because they're not hungry anymore, so
yeah, it's like, what would the impulse be? I will say, I think Vicky could have held Elena in that car even with her human strength, so that's neither here nor there. But the Mason one does, in fact, convince me. I think Vicky could have held that bitch down easy. It's not even act. Vicky tussles, listen.
She was holding like one leg and Elena was struggling to get out. And I was like, girl, you can't yank your leg free.
You can't throw a little kick? Like, come on, Elena, what are we doing? I love you, girl, but damn. Yeah, I guess the only special aspect of ghosts is important in tandem with mediums, because we learn about the two at the same time. And that's at the end of season 2, beginning of season 3. After Jeremy dies and is brought back to life by Bonnie, which is the requirement to become a medium. Mediums are less a supernatural archetype and more of like a symptom or a consequence of resurrection in a magical... This is the thing too that's difficult, and we'll get into it, but seemingly magical resurrection. Bonnie brings back Jeremy using magic after he's shot by Sheriff Liz Forbes, who was trying to shoot Damon, who ran out of the way. Then he starts seeing, he thinks, visions of his dead ex-girlfriends, both of whom were vampires and died very young and suddenly. Vicky and Anna, that is.
Well, Anna wasn't that young.
Yeah, that's true. Anna was 500 years old.
500.
You make a good point. So he starts seeing them. Vicky, very classic poltergeist style, walking through hallways in the background, bursting through glass just to cause drama. Anna, though, he connects with more on a personal level because at some point he is able to actually see and hear her and have a conversation with her. And they realize that The requirement is that the medium from the living side must be pushing to reach the ghost in question, and the ghost from the other side must be pushing to try and reach the medium, and then a connection is made. And that's how they can communicate. And so it so happens Anna was trying to reach Jeremy the whole time since she's died, effectively, and Jeremy was having a dream about Anna in this moment after having seen her like pass by in his room. And then they're able to communicate. Mediums are the only ones who can, other than like particular witches who like see into the other side, mediums can just see the spirits, the ghosts of supernatural creatures they were close to or knew in real life. It's kind of iffy. He's able to see Vicky and Anna, who were his girlfriends. He's able to see Rose, who he kind of knew in passing. With a little bit of work, he finds her.
Yeah. He later sees Alaric once Alaric has died as Vampalaric.
Right. He does not see Elena, who dies but becomes a vampire. So that one's interesting.
I guess when you die, despite whatever Bonnie was attempting to do at the beginning of season 4, when you die as a vampire,
your ghost just clings to your body.
Yeah, and you awaken in transition, your spirit isn't on the other side. Or at least your consciousness isn't on the other side.
Interesting. Okay. But yeah, largely ghosts can communicate through mediums. They can have some physical effect to the tangible world, but that's not inherent to ghosts. That was during the time that Esther was manipulating things from the other side to make it so that ghosts could appear physically and cause mayhem. So
yeah.
On a normal day, a ghost can't do shit. At least in the real world.
Yeah, which spirits on the other side, you said you don't know how much power they have. Initially in season 3, it was said that, if a witch has a talisman, in the world of the living, they can enact their power through that talisman. In this instance, it was Esther's necklace passed on to Rebecca, found by Stefan, given to Elena.
Long road.
Which was the reason she could do magic. But there are instances of other witches like doing magic either when they're being channeled by their descendants or, the 100 dead witches who can do magic in the house on the spot when they die.
Yeah, they can just do magic, which is like, that also precedes the Esther stuff. So it's like, well, clearly they have power. I guess the whole house is their talisman, considering they were burned to death.
And they did say when a witch dies violently, it marks that spot with supernatural power. I'm giggling because I'm thinking of Esther dying violently in the same spot twice.
It'll never cease to tickle me. But yeah, certainly I should be able to light a few candles in the space that I was violently burned to death by colonialists. I think I should be allowed that much, So, yes. And Emily will act through Bonnie every now and then. So yeah, she's obviously got some power. But that was through her talisman.
Yeah, does her necklace ever come back again after the tomb arc?
No, it gets destroyed. She destroys... Because it's that yellow thing. Because Damon wanted to use it to open the tomb.
Oh yes,
Emily
she
destroys it through Bonnie.
That was the original way to open the tomb without like lowering the barrier like manually.
You did still need a witch to do it, but it's like you could get any old witch to use the talisman and open the tomb. But then because that was destroyed, Damon then had to have a Bennett witch specifically and just have the spell that Emily used to close it to then open it.
I wonder if a medium would be able to perceive a wearer of the Gilbert ring temporarily on the other side, because we learn in season 5, is it? Season 5?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when the other side starts falling apart. We learn in season 5 that that's how the Gilbert rings work, that you are temporarily transported to the other side and then have to find your way back to your body, appearing further and further away from it each time. And that once you find your body, you touch it, you wake up again, but you have no memory of being on the other side. So I wonder if a medium would be able to see what is technically a ghost of someone wearing the Gilbert ring before they wake up.
It's interesting you bring that up because at the time, we see that through Bonnie, who is a ghost and is on the other side. But in that season, Bonnie becomes the anchor, which is, in its truest sense, a medium, right? Just with the added bit that, like, she's not technically alive, not technically dead. She walks with a foot in each realm. But she can see ghosts everywhere. She can see them in the other side. She can see people who have just died in the real world and are coming to walk through her as a gate to the other side. So, in a sense, the anchors, it's Bonnie now, and prior to Bonnie, it was Amara for like 1,000 years or 2,000 years. They can see ghosts too, the way that mediums can, but better. So, I think she would be able to perceive that as the anchor. I don't know if, because she's better than an anchor, maybe that's why. Maybe a medium wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. It's just that they hadn't conceived of it at the time. No, because Jeremy doesn't see Matt go off.
I guess because he's not where Matt's ghost is before it wakes up.
True. But Rick went directly to Jeremy when he died.
Well, that was when he died properly, right?
True.
When he died as Vampalaric.
Yeah. I guess it is also that, like, if you're wearing the Gilbert ring, then that means you're not supernatural and you're not meant to be on the other side anyways. That's just a gateway passage for you. So it's like maybe mediums wouldn't see you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's fine. Also, you touched on it, so we can address it. I'll just start by saying, at the end of season 2, when Jeremy is dead and Bonnie is using the 100 Dead Witches magic to resurrect him, later on at the end of the episode in the denouement, she's like, "Are you feeling okay? Is everything fine?" And he's like, "I feel a little weird." And she's like, "Well, you died and came back. It'd be weird if you didn't feel weird." And we as the audience are like waiting for, what's the consequence gonna be? There was gonna be a consequence. And then Anna and Vicky's ghosts show up and the season ends. And it's like, okay, so Jeremy being a medium was seemingly the consequences they were talking about, because I know the other side starts to get a bit rickety in season 3 because Esther's doing stuff. But I don't think that was because Bonnie brought Jeremy back, or was it?
I think it was in a way. I think Gogo tells her what I forgot her name. Grams tells her. Instinctively, my brain reached for grandmother, and Gogo is the first thing that came to me. That's the Zulu instinct really took over for some reason. Anyway, Grams tells her that what she did, bringing back Jeremy, kicked open a door between the other side and the real world, and that allowed Esther to start doing her machinations. So in a way, that is the consequence also. So it's a number of things.
Okay, so I guess the door being opened is the consequence of the magic of it all, and being a medium
of necromancy.
Yeah, being a medium, I guess, can just happen through mundane means. As we later learn.
Yes. We're to touch on it. The only other medium we get in the show is Matt Donovan, who is not brought back by magical means. He drowns, and Bonnie brings him back using CPR. And through that, he is able to perceive Vicky so that she can try and give him a message. And
only Vicky. He's never able to perceive anyone else ever again. So it's like...
never a medium after that. It's like, what?
Was a medium just for Vicky?
I guess with the shenanigans of Esther's machinations. Maybe because Esther was already like helping Vicky try and push through. It worked, but it's like, it really shouldn't. It really... CPR. Let me do it then. I can bring someone back and make them a medium, right? It's like,
yeah, and also,
when Joe bringing back Rick, is he a medium now?
I was gonna say, what's her name? Well, I guess Rick is dying as a vampire who's being magically unmade by the Traveler Bubble into a human.
But she resuscitates him as a dying human. He explicitly has his vampirism stripped away.
But he's not dead yet, so he's still alive when she is helping him, like, with the
is he
wound.
not clinically dead and then she helps him come back?
No, she
just stops him from dying.
She stops him from dying, because that's how the Traveler magic worked. It would give you whatever injury or condition had killed you as a vampire.
I thought she brought him back from clinical death. That's my bad.
No, he hadn't died. What I will say is, what is her name now? Season 8, drunk
Season
driver.
8, Sybil, Celine.
No. Drunk driver girl.
Scagliotti. I just remember her real name.
Scagliotti died a clinical death and saw a vision of hell and came back, but she's not a medium.
Yeah, why doesn't she get medium powers? She was brought back by an EMT. Like,
if anyone should be a medium, it should be the girl who went to a psychic man's eternal prison of torment. Like,
I guess
and came back.
In a way, she does say she still sees visions of hell in her dreams. The other side is gone, so it's like that is her version of being a medium.
Oh yeah, the other side is
gone. She gets to see the fires of hell.
Man, one day we need to discuss the various planes of existence in this world. They're crazy.
That's one more Gilbert Journal added to the list. Shit, what is her name? She has like a name where it's like, oh, it's like a boy's name, but like, what is gender with names?
I can't remember. Does it also start with
Rory? Brady? It's like something like that. Maybe I'm crazy. Joey?
I think
No.
you're right.
Jerry?
Let's see.
Stevie?
Who does Scagliotti play?
It's one of these
She
names.
plays Georgie. There we go. You're
George,
right.
see? I was like, I know it's one of those names where it's like, it's a boy's name, but I'm a girl. Her name is Georgie. Yeah, Georgie technically becomes a medium in that she can see the... But the thing is, she wasn't seeing anyone in hell. She was just seeing herself burning in hell and knew that that was her future when she died. So it's like...
Also, when did she suffer this clinical death? Because it seems like it was years before, and the other side was still around until
That's true.
recently.
So she should, yeah. Then our point still stands. She should be a medium.
Maybe she didn't know anyone supernatural enough to end up on the other side.
That's true. That is the thing, that it's like the other side is just supernatural creatures. And what are the chances you knew a supernatural creature and knew they were supernatural?
Yeah.
Not that you need to know that they were supernatural, but, you know, I digress. Yeah, that's really all there is to mediums. Also, like doppelgangers, where it's like you're important for this one use and then that's it. You can't really do anything as a person. You're still susceptible to manipulation, whether vampire or magical. You can only ever see people if they're also trying to reach out to you. And yeah, they really don't do much with it after that. It's just every now and then when we need to confirm someone's dead or speak to somebody who's no longer in the story, we cart out Jeremy to do his medium shit.
They're also mundane enough that Gilbert rings continue to work for them because Jeremy keeps using the Gilbert ring until he becomes a supernatural hunter, which thankfully doesn't affect his medium status once he does become a hunter.
Which I guess, you know what? Step above doppelganger. You can still you still get the benefits of mortality even though you have all the vulnerabilities. Wild. So yeah, that's ghosts and mediums. Yeah, I think that's our full list.
That's everyone. We've discussed the OG immortals in the vampire
Certainly.
episode, yeah.
And we also have discussed the siren episode has everything about the two sirens that ever existed. So I don't think they really deserve their own Gilbert Journal. You know, what more is there to know?
This world is so sparse. 2 doppelganger bloodlines, 2 sirens who ever
Two
existed.
sirens. That's it.
Ironically, we're told that werewolves are endangered, but eventually they start popping up everywhere.
Oh, they start popping up like wild deer. It's like all of a sudden I got werewolves everywhere. What's happening? I thought you guys were all dead. Love to see it, of course. You know, any given story, I'm down with the werewolves. Let's go. But yeah, not much. I think not much else when it comes to archetypes in terms of this world. So that closes out, I guess, that for the Gilbert Journals. But there's still plenty of lore to dive into. And we certainly will be coming in future. I don't know if we've teased it, but Dagger Watch is on the horizon, baby.
Yes.
We're gonna be watching those daggers.
I'm going to do my research. I'm going to watch both shows. I need to know. I'm going to be counting. I'm going to be noting down the dates when all these flashbacks are taking place.
We are building the timeline of those freaking daggers. The White Oak Ash will not fool us, okay? We know. And we will root out any inconsistencies and complain about them in full measure.
Yes. I love that we still don't even know how many there are.
No, we
5 or
spoke about it
6.
in the Est episode, and we're like 5 or 6, you know, broad number. Were they created with Michael in mind? Maybe, maybe not. With Klaus in mind? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Until Dagger Watch Mania points to the WrestleMania sign on the wall. Until then, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to our episode. If you have any questions, queries, or just want to say hi, you can mail us at animalattackpod@gmail.com. You can also tweet us on Twitter at animattackpod. That's at ANIM Attack Pod. You'll find our link tree in the bio that has all our online stuff. If you're listening to us on a podcast platform, give us a rating, shoot us a review, tell us in, I don't know, 20 words. What's a reasonable amount? Even if it's like a 5-word review, just give us your thoughts. What do you think? Do you think we're smart? Good speakers? Sound like very appealing gentlemen? Whatever you think, let us know.
Tell us we're funny.
Yes, that's the most important one. I don't care about any of that other shit. Tell us we're hilarious. Oh, man. But yeah, thanks again for tuning in. We love making this show, and as long as you love it, we'll keep making it. We will see you in the next episode. Cheers.
Bye.